What's going on, everyone? I'm just a typical, average American here today to react and learn about the most northern town in Canada. Man, I thought the further north in Canada you get, the least densely populated it gets, less and less people living there. This place, this town is more north than I ever thought possible. I don't know how you can do it. I was reading the description of this. It's called Grice Fjord. It's a town called Grice Fjord. I mean, in the description of this video, it says it's one of those places on Earth where you can get 24 hours of darkness in the winter, 24 hours of sunlight sometimes of year. Like, it's just nuts. It's crazy. It's very fascinating. And I was looking it up on Google, and the description I got for Grice Fjord is an Inuit hamlet. I don't know what a hamlet is, but it's an Inuit hamlet on the southern tip of Ellesmere Island. Right there. Let's open it up. Let's open up the map. Get a little appreciation for where we are before we check out the video. Oh, yes, there is quite a few. This is a collection of islands, isn't it? I'm sure this has a proper name that I don't know about. Let me drag it here. Oh, wow. It's a lot bigger than I'm glad I opened it like this, because the sense of scale is way different than I thought. I also didn't know Canada could get so close to Greenland. Okay, that's that's beside the point right now. But for now, I found this fun little video. It popped up for me. Why Canada's northernmost town exists. Grice Fjord. And I'm just hoping this will teach me maybe about the people who live here, what it's all about, how they survive here. Like, just anything. Anything I can learn about this would be fascinating and very helpful. So let's take a look.
3,461 kilometers, or 2,150 miles from Canada's capital of Ottawa, lies Canada's northernmost permanently inhabited town, Grice Fjord. This small town in the northern region of Nunavut is just 1,500 kilometers from the North Pole and lies well into the Arctic Circle.
It's almost, it's not that far from the North Pole. How freaking cold can it get there as well?
With no roads connecting Grice Fjord to the rest of Canada, having one of the coldest climates in the world with an average temperature of just 2.3 degrees Fahrenheit or 16.5 degrees Celsius.
No, yeah, he makes a good point. How do you get here? Well, I guess the people living here are probably very self-sustaining or have figured out something at least.
A polar winter which lasts for over 2 months, resulting in 24-hour darkness. You may be wondering why
polar winter. There's a phrase I never wanted to think about experiencing. Yeah, I know when you get north enough on the planet, you can have like 24 hours of dark. It can honestly be like emotionally difficult to deal with like no darkness or zero sunlight for months. It's very interesting.
Anybody would choose to live in this extreme civilization.
Oh, yeah, exactly. I hope we're going to talk a little bit about the community that lives here.
You may be wondering why anybody would choose to live in this extreme civilization. The settlement of Grice Fjord was created in 1952 by the Canadian government to establish Canadian sovereignty in the Arctic.
What? So, man, this was only made 70 years ago. I thought maybe this was like maybe some native Canadians or something like that who have just inhabited this area for a long time. But according to this narrator, it's 70 years old, created by the Canadian government to have a presence here?
By the Canadian government to establish Canadian sovereignty in the Arctic.
Canadian sovereignty in the Arctic. Like a Canadian presence in the Arctic?
Canada wanted to assert their dominance in the Arctic during the Cold War to take control of largely uninhabited land. The Canadian government promised improved living conditions for many of the Inuit tribe already living in the Nunavut region.
Oh, yeah. See, there you go. There are people who are already happily living here, inhabiting this area. The Inuit, are we saying?
Improved living conditions for many of the Inuit tribe.
Inuit tribe. Okay, so they were already living there, and then the Canadian government, like, sponsored this town be built, somewhat having to do with the Cold War. I think I'm hanging on here. I'm hanging on by a thread.
Already living in the Nunavut region. The Inuit were assured plentiful wildlife, homes, and game to hunt, but as the Inuit were relocated to Grise Fjord, none of that was very true. The Inuit came into an Arctic tundra climate with no homes and very little food options available. To make matters even worse...
Yeah, seriously, like, this, I was gonna say, must be one of the most difficult places on Earth to, like, inhabit and live. It may be the most difficult place I could imagine to try to just travel there, settle down, and live your life. I guess on the extreme other end, it'd be like tough to live in like the middle of a desert. And this is kind of like the extreme opposite.
First, the Inuit were promised to be returned to their original homes after a year of staying in Grise Fjord. But this offer later became withdrawn as this would have damaged Canada's claim to sovereignty in the area. It was clear...
Okay, there's a little bit of controversy in this story. Let me hear that again.
Available. To make matters even worse, the Inuit were promised to be returned to their original homes after a year of staying in Grise Fjord. But this offer later became withdrawn as this would have damaged Canada's claim to sovereignty in the area.
What does this offer has been withdrawn mean? Like, we're literally not letting them return home to a different part of this territory that they want to go? And they have to live in Grise Fjord? Or maybe there's more explanation to all this.
It was clear the Inuit were either going to have to learn how to adapt, or death would surely follow. It wasn't until 41 years later, in 1993, where the Canadian government finally held hearings to investigate this relocation program that led to many Inuits' unfortunate death. The hearings resulted in the Canadian government finally giving $10 million in Canadian dollars to the residents of Grise Fjord to evenly distribute amongst themselves.
Okay. I'm sure there's more to this story, but it sounds like there's a bit of a mess up back in the day, 70-ish years ago, and then fast forward more towards the future, the Canadian government was like, hey, wait, we should look at this seriously, and then actually ended up paying like a reparation type thing, $10 million to the Inuit people to disperse, and maybe some other things as well.
To the residents of Grise Fjord to evenly distribute amongst themselves. Finally, in 2010, Canada issued a formal apology for the relocation, just a shy 58 years later after the relocation program was implemented.
Okay, so this was acknowledged by Canada as like a travesty, a mistake, with a formal apology. Well, okay. Better late than never, I suppose. Better to address it than to have never done anything at all, so that's good.
The population of Grise Fjord is currently 129 permanent residents.
Wow.
This is only one person less than the Grise Fjord population in 2011.
What is this? Is that a narwhal? I thought that was a made-up creature. This looks like a narwhal. I thought this was a mythical creature, but look like they're gonna eat it. So there's only 100-some permanent residents of this town. That actually makes sense.
This is only one person less than the Grise Fjord population in 2011, which was 130 residents.
Okay.
Grise Fjord does receive some tourists each year, normally coming in for the summer months. The only way in and out of Grise Fjord is their singular airstrip that accompanies only one destination. This destination is Resolute, Canada, which is a 148-mile flight and only takes about an hour and a half.
Wow, this place is very, very difficult to get to. Man, I wonder if supplies are like regularly flown in, or at least, I mean, that picture showed that the people there were literally like possibly catching fish for themselves and eating it, which actually be kind of cool. If you want to visit here, and apparently a handful of people want to visit, you have to travel to Resolute, which is itself kind of hard to get to by the look of it, and only then can you then fly to the one airport in Grise Fjord.
Resolute is the nearest settlement and is where many of the Inuit tribe were forced to relocate from during the Cold War.
Okay.
Canadian North is the only airline that services this flight, but doesn't offer it too often, with an average of just 9 flights in and out every month.
Wow.
Surrounded by snow-capped mountains, the Greifsfjord airstrip has one of the most difficult approaches for aircrafts that require only the most experienced pilots.
Right.
Sometimes in the summer months, the bay will thaw and then the residents can use their fishing boats to reach nearby hunting grounds or to hunt mammals in the sea.
Oh my gosh, it's so cold that there are times of year where they can't even get to their boats to fish, but at other times they can, which is pretty awesome.
Sea fishing is potentially the only reason the Inuit were able to survive in Greifsfjord, as
Right.
after being relocated here in 1952, the Inuit discovered that they were very close to the beluga whale migration routes.
Oh, beluga whale. Is that what that was? It wasn't a narwhal. Maybe it was a beluga whale. Wow. Gosh, right. So they were forced to migrate to this town that was even further north, which means like even more cold, more cold than where they originated from.
These beluga whales would provide food for the entire community for many months and were
Wow.
easy to preserve given the extremely cold, freezer-like temperatures.
Yeah.
Aside from the villagers' own boats, once a year, a Canadian government ship, known as a sea lift, would arrive in Greifsfjord with much-needed supplies and fuel.
Right.
Supplies for new infrastructure or vehicles would come in once a year on this sea lift.
I was wondering, I was like, wait, the Canadian government was like addressing this whole situation, and it seems like there'd be some kind of arrangement like this. So it's like a massive boat once a year with like, wow, that looks like a lot of stuff, honestly. Needs to be enough stuff for at least 130-ish people.
This is quite the difference from most communities in North America, where Amazon delivers just about any product to you in a matter of a couple days. As for land travel, most
Yeah.
residents use all-terrain vehicles in the summer, such as ATVs and pickup trucks. Other
Okay.
than during the summer months, the main modes of transportation include snowmobiles and dog sledding.
What? We're actually out here using dog sleds to get around. That's actually kind of awesome.
The economy of Greifsfjord is rather small, with a town only having one grocery store. Greifsfjord has a cooperative store that is essentially a grocery store that is owned by the people who use it. The residents
Right.
of Greifsfjord get to decide on what foods and products will be stocked on the shelves, where those items are purchased, and the quality standards that both the products and the vendors need to meet.
Wow, I mean, this is such an isolated community. It is great that they have a grocery store. I'm actually surprised. But how are they earning like an income if they're selling things at this store? Are they making money? Maybe it's money from the government, or maybe they're able to do some kind of sell something or have some kind of skill or trade, or I don't know. It'd be fascinating to learn some of the specifics about this like really unique community living in the middle of nowhere, way more north than I thought possible.
This cooperative store is usually run by the residents of Greifsfjord,
Right.
but the employees hadn't been filing financial papers, attending meetings, and most importantly, failing to stock the groceries. Eventually, this prompted the territorial government to take over and run the cooperative store. The
Okay.
residents of Greifsfjord obviously weren't in favor of the Canadian government taking over given their past, so the residents of Nunavut's northernmost town are hoping to take back their co-op.
Oh man, there is quite a bit of controversy going on here. Man, it's kind of sad to hear, but I understand. I understand the situation. I mean, if the Canadian government really did force these people to like leave their home and go to this random town, that does seem pretty bad. So it is nice that the Canadian government is like trying to make it right, but now there's like a dispute with the grocery store, and that's unfortunate.
For many of them, having control of the co-op serves as a symbol of the community's independence, something that they value greatly. The
Sure.
community leader mentioned that they would like to deal with the territorial government as little as possible. The government having control of the local co-op hasn't been all that bad, however. Many important items such as milk and perishables that hadn't been on shelves for a while are now back on the shelves and available for purchase.
Okay.
In addition, the government has been able to keep the co-op store consistently open, something that wasn't happening when the store was independently owned.
Okay. Well, I guess I understand the townspeople like being very, very, very skeptical of receiving more help from the government because they've had a very, very negative experience. But it's nice that the co-op, the store, is like being run like well and getting the people like more access to different goods that they might not otherwise have. That's nice.
The government currently has a 6-month
Klondike bars. The Klondike ice cream bars. What? I don't know what we'd do without those.
lease on the co-op store and is able to renew the lease for 3-month periods. The Canadian government doesn't want to hand back control of the co-op until an audit is completed. Because the community is so small, it is no one person's fault that the store went into debt, but until an audit is completed, the residents need to have a community meeting, and the community needs to find out how much debt the co-op has accumulated. Aside from this local convenience store, another source of the residents' income relies on guided hunting and outfitting operations on nearby land.
Wow, this is like not surprising. Living in this kind of habitat, the people are like have very, very, very traditional culture, like literally capturing hunting bears, possibly whatever they're about to do with these spears.
The region that Gray Fjord is in, Nunavut, actually features some of the most exotic and highly prized hunting in the world. Mammals that live in this region include extremely dangerous polar bears, abundant caribou, walruses, and the healthiest and least threatened population of wolves in the world.
Wolves? And
Live in this region include extremely dangerous polar bears, abundant caribou, walruses.
Walruses? Do they actually hunt the walrus? The caribou for sure, right? Caribou would be hard to hunt. Man, it did look like they had like ammo and guns as well, though.
Hunting from these mammals. Residents will sell traditional clothing, carvings, and Inuit crafts, typically to outsiders visiting this Arctic community.
Okay, there you go. I was wondering, like, do they have any kind of ways to make income, sell things, like, based off some of the things they do and their culture? It's like, yeah, they actually do.
There's not a ton of opportunity for economic growth in the Grise Fjord area, especially due to the frequent avalanches and rockfalls of the nearby mountains, which limits the room for expansion. One benefit to living in Grise Fjord, however, is that the community is extremely safe from crime. A Simon Fraser University study found that Grise Fjord has the lowest rate of criminal offenses of all communities in Canada examined in 1992.
Yeah, yeah, it better. It better have the least crime. There's 129 people. If you commit a crime, literally you can gather everyone together and be like, who did it? Like, Jake, was it you? Like, you can get, there's just not enough people to like blend into the shadow. And also, when you're as tight a knit a community as that, tight knit, I feel like there's probably a level of respect and like appreciation amongst each other as a family, where the whole town is like, hey, we don't steal stuff. Like, we're all a family here. We all know each other.
This is good to know, considering Grise Fjord only has a singular emergency vehicle, which is actually out of service with a missing wheel until a mechanic is able to fly in and repair the pickup truck used for emergency services.
Yeah. Why does this truck have a bunch of bullet holes in it? What the? Okay. And I hope this is a stock image of a truck. Or maybe they found that one guy who's doing all the crime. I should stop joking about that. Yeah, it makes sense. When anything goes wrong in this town, this is one of the most difficult places to receive aid. So that's a pretty big drawback. Medical attention, stuff like that, yeah.
As mentioned before, Grise Fjord is one of the coldest communities in the entire world, with an average yearly temperature of just 2.3 degrees Fahrenheit, or negative 16.5 degrees Celsius.
Yeah.
The winters last almost the entire year, while the summers are very cool and short. February is the coldest month on Grise Fjord, with an average temperature of negative 34 degrees Celsius, or negative 29.2 degrees Fahrenheit.
Impossible. I can't imagine. And it seems like a lot of the people there are young kids. Imagine living your entire life in this kind of climate. That'd be pretty wild, but you don't really know anything different. And at least it's kind of the modern age where a lot of their buildings probably have like good heating and stuff like that. I hope. I say that. But yeah, just like this is this is where you were born and raised in this you're one of 130 people in this super unique place.
With the warmest month being July with an average temperature of just 2 degrees Celsius and 36 degrees Fahrenheit. Grise Fjord is often referred to as the place that never thaws, given the temperature rarely breaks the freezing mark. The community has built water and plumbing pipes above ground to avoid the pipes from freezing. Water has to be continuously running through these pipes to avoid them from freezing up. At the end of the day, it is truly hard to conceptualize how difficult it is to live in Canada's northernmost town.
Seriously, look, it's even the little stuff like this, having a playground permanently frozen and snowy. When you're living here, it's like, it doesn't matter. At least you can still find a way to have fun. And plus, it's like, this is what you got, so might as well make the best of it. Seems like they're having fun on the little jungle gym.
Northernmost town. Grise Fjord probably wouldn't exist if it wasn't for Canada's desire to claim control of the Arctic during the Cold War. Fortunately, the residents of Grise Fjord have developed a frontier-like mindset that has helped them to survive and prosper in such a harsh tundra-like climate. All 129 residents feel as though they are one big family and couldn't imagine living elsewhere. Do you think you could live in Grise Fjord?
No. Wow, this was by Uncovering. I like this. That was a great little story. Kind of sad at parts, kind of a little controversial at parts, but you know, that's part of the fun. That's part of the interest in addressing and learning about these things. And then you can like not repeat stuff from the past that's bad and make amends. And it sounds like Canada, the Canadian government, has attempted to do that at some level. But mostly what I appreciated here is just like the will of the people living here, like making the best of it in this just unbelievable, like the narrator said, like just an unbelievable living situation and isolation. I can't really imagine, but this at least let me tinker on the brink of imagining what this would be like. So I enjoyed this. Anyway, if you enjoyed this as well, feel free to give this video a like or leave a comment. And if you're interested in more videos like this, me reacting to Canada, Canadian culture, stuff in Canada that I have never seen before, feel free to subscribe for more. And until then, thanks for watching, and see you next time.